Greetings, my pixel perfect Sega fans. It's Dan the Mega Driver here of the Sega Guys with another Sega Guys podcast where 2 dimensions were always more than enough. Join me on the podcast as ever. It's the cotton to my Hahn. It's James the SEGAHolic. How you doing, mate?
I'm very good, mate. How's yourself?
Very good, mate. Very good. It's been a busy week. We've got reviews in the bag. We've got a couple of bonus videos last week. I mean, at the time of recording, this is probably going to come out, a month or 2 down the line. But at the time of recording, we've just done the review for Moonwalker, which will be going live tomorrow.
Yep.
We've got House of Dead 2 that just went. I've just finished recording the review for Fatal Rewind. We recorded a podcast on Wednesday. Was on the Sega Lounge. Yeah, I was on the Sega Lounge yesterday and recording again on the Friday. It's been all systems go in the Sega Guys. So it's great, mate. It's been a lot of fun, especially playing a lot of the games that we've been talking about and the games that we're going to talk about today. How about yourself?
Hey, mate. I mean, you've been doing the capture you've done the capture for the episode we just done, which was obviously the games that should have been on Sega. So this will be my turn to be on capture duty for the games that we're going to talk about today, because we are focusing again on the Sega Saturn. But it's, again, in terms of what I've been playing, so I've been through these games for tonight. I've been playing a good bit of Cotton 2. I actually put Shinobi X on as well, because I was debating whether to choose that for one of my 5 for tonight, and I thought the digitised characters, I don't think I'd get away with classing that as 2D. I know it's not 3D, but the whole digitised characters thing I thought might be pushing it, so I had to drop it out. But my God, that's a great game. It really
Shinobi
is.
X, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So good, so good.
The opening stage is very good, especially.
Aye. It's I just love the kind of the opening sequence whenever you get the kind of CGI kind of video of the ninja down and like that, and he looks to the camera and then he shoots off and he gets into the game. But the effects on that as well, whenever you slice with the katana and the body goes in half, and it's just superb.
Good stuff, mate. But yeah, so back to the Saturn tonight with a focus on the 2D side. Now, we've gone through a few episodes recently, particularly the Model 2 ports, very much a 2D focused episode. I don't think there was a single 2D game there, was there? No. For a Saturn that's got notoriously claimed to be a console that either wasn't good at 3D or wasn't built for 3D, even though we know to an extent that's not entirely true, but that's a discussion for another time. But for a console that isn't renowned for its 3D capabilities, it had some great 3D games, and I think we've neglected to an extent the 2D prowess that the machine had, because it really was an absolute powerhouse in the 2D realm.
Aye. 2D was obviously, where the Saturn's focus was primarily before, all the kind of additional CPU stuff and things like that, and the enhancement of an additional, processor for geometry and 3D calculations and stuff. But no one can deny, Saturn's 2D prowess, and I think that we were spoiled for choice. We've picked 10, but I think we could easily have another 10.
I think we pretty much had another 10 in the WhatsApp chat when we were picking them out for this video. I mean, I swapped a few around at the last minute as well.
Yeah, I mean, another one I was looking at, and I didn't know if it would be cheating as well, because it's technically a super scaler game. I was looking at Power Drift as well.
Yes. I had similar thoughts, because I had Power Drift and Outrun in my head, and I was like, well, yes, they're super scalar games and not specific to the Saturn, even though in Outrun's case, it really is evidence of its 2D power, because obviously Outrun 2 on the Saturn is even better than the arcade. If you play the Japanese version or the American SEGAGuys version, it's locked at 60 frames per, you can lock it at 60 frames per second, which is double the arcade game's refresh rate, which is pretty stellar when you think about it. Well, it's crazy because Outrun was so ahead of its time that it took a decade for it to actually become arcade perfect. And then the Saturn actually got it better than arcade perfect. So yeah, Power Drift and Outrun, I mean, they are 2D games. Let's be honest. But I think the games that we've chosen here are games of the Saturn's era, and most of them are pretty much exclusive to the Saturn. The ones that aren't exclusive were either ports that were best on the Saturn, or ones where the Saturn was as close to the arcade as possible. So, but they are all games that came from what I think 95, probably the earliest in this list. But we've got a real mix in here. So, but yeah, I mean, the thing about the Saturn that always strikes me in terms of its 2D power is the Mega Drive really was just pure grunt. There was a lot of chat recently, a few good discussions on X, just around the Mega Drive versus SNES hardware, which I found quite interesting. And it was talking about how the Mega Drive was just the superior console, and everyone's like, no, it couldn't do this, it couldn't do that. But the gulf in actual raw horsepower between the 68,000 in the Mega Drive or Genesis versus the chip in the Super Nintendo was massive. It was like 7 megahertz versus 3.2 or something like that. More than double the processing power that the SNES had, but the SNES obviously had a lot of bespoke chips that allowed it to do some extremely clever things. And I've made this comparison before, whereas the Saturn very much is more akin to a Super Nintendo than it is to a Mega Drive, owing to the fact that, yes, it was perhaps considerably weaker than maybe its contemporaries, certainly had a weaker processor than the PlayStation, albeit you had the 2 SH2s rather than the 1. But it did have a lot of kind of bespoke chips. Obviously, 13 processors. The Saturn has 3 processors.
Sorry, PlayStation, you don't have 13 processors.
But yeah, it does all these things like the stuff that VDP2 does. VDP1 working in tandem. You've got other control chips, and it just all works together to do all these special things. Like another game that I was going to pick, and I thought, well, it's got polygons in it, but Radiant Silvergun, and the use of VDP2 in that game, it looks like it's polygonal graphic background, especially when you're going up the buildings, up the side, and everything's moving around. And that's all done through the secret source of
where we got it in there. Copyright.
Shout out to John Linneman there. Yeah, but yeah, it's all done via VDP2, and it's that which I think, in terms of makeup, that's what makes the Saturn similar to the Super Nintendo, and that's why I think most of its effects are 2D focused rather than 3D. And that always lends me to the credence that the actual hardware design didn't actually change that much in response to the PlayStation. They added the extra SH2 in there for compute, but the effects were still 2D based rather than 3D, and that's why we have all this treasure trove of gems that we have in front of us today.
No, and it's deserved, conversation, because you see we have focused a lot on the kind of the Model 2 stuff and whatnot, but as you say, going through all these, mate, it's a treasure trove of stuff. It absolutely is. I mean, whenever you mentioned Radiant Silvergun, I was just like, yes, because that was the first one I put down, and I was like, well, again, that's kind of cheating, isn't it? It's not, because it has 3D looking elements to it, so I was like, I had to bin it off. But we covered Radiant Silvergun in the import episode we did previously, and that's something else we try to do here as well, because we're aware that we have done like the import show where we did the best Saturn imports. It was trying to not overly repeat that, which I think we've managed to do quite well actually. It's a much more varied selection as well.
Yeah, we've got a couple of Capcom games on here that weren't in our Capcom on Sega podcast that we did for Winterfest, 2-3 years ago.
It's 3?
Is it 3? Wow.
I think Capcom and Sega was the first one, was it not?
It was the first one, yeah.
So that'd be, aye.
Yeah, so I mean that we'll get that one on YouTube eventually. But yeah, very little crossover. So 10 games that we haven't, and some of these are surprising that we haven't spent that much time talking about them. So mate, I think we'll we'll jump straight in. And I think we'll jump in with the top of your list, in as you've mentioned it already, and that is Cotton 2, and an absolutely sensational looking game, and just everything about the way it looks is just something I'm a massive fan of. Even the way that she rotates when she moves on her broom, it's very subtle, but it's there, and it adds it's just such a subtle but brilliant effect, because it just adds so much weight and kind of heft to her movement. And then as a game, incredibly challenging, but just incredibly fun, deep, unique, and just all round just a wonderful experience.
Aye, and as you say, you started off talking about how it looks. It's absolutely gorgeous. The sense of depth in all the stages, the multiple kind of parallax layers that you've got there, whether it's in the sky, through caves, you name it, there's so much depth in there. All the enemies, they're so beautifully animated and drawn, like little kind of green, kind of dragon goblin style monsters that come down in waves. Like you can see that they're snarling at you. Like there's so much character and everything that's in the game. I mean, the mechanics of it as well. Like as you shoot enemies, there's the crystals. As you shoot them, they change colour. Each colour represents something different. You can get a life up. You can get the green kind of curve style shot. You can get like the flames. It's so good and very, very challenging. Like the bosses are huge at the end of each level. Like they fill half the screen. Just absolutely brilliant. And it's also had an English fan translation as well, so you can now follow the story. I mean, it's not a game that to play it you need English, but to fully understand the story and what's going on, you get a big intro in there as well to explain about the magic fountain or something that they've got.
Oh, no idea.
It's as we were talking about before we started, but it's like some magical element they've got in their village and it's stolen and you have to get it back and stuff like that. But and in between levels you get like the cutscenes with the two characters. They're beautifully anime style drawn. They pop in from either side of the screen with text at the bottom, so you can follow that. And what was quite funny, what we were talking about before we started recording, is that you'd tried it there and you've not tried the English version yet.
That's right, yeah.
And you thought the system was telling you that you didn't have your 4 meg RAM card inserted.
Yeah.
So if anyone doesn't have the English patch and you get to that screen and you think, the cartridge is in, it's actually the thing that comes up on screen says, use the optional 4 megabyte RAM cartridge to hear additional sound effects, basically voice samples and stuff like that. So all it is it's telling you that if you've got it, that will use it. But you might think that it's doing the old Capcom thing where it just gives you a screen of jargon, and the only thing you can make out is 4 megabyte, and you go, no, it's not working again.
Yeah, it's not required. It's optional, isn't it? And it does give you the extra voice, gives you the extra sound effects, which again, it's not going to add an awful lot if you're playing the Japanese version like I was. I mean, I was playing it on the Fenrir. It's an extremely expensive game to pick up, even not long after its release. It was one of those early Saturn games, similar to Radiant Silvergun, that gained a lot of infamy for its price. But I played it on a GDME, but I was playing the English translation, so I was looking at the screen going, oh, I've got my card in there, it's working. I literally saw the action replay flash, and then it said brown card detected. Like, yes, it's in, it's there. But
it flags up in the top left hand corner. It just goes extra RAM detected. But it's not, as you say, it's not mandatory. It will use the 1 or the 4 megabyte cartridge to unlock those additional sounds, but it's not like Astro Superstars, for example, where if you've got the additional RAM you get more frames of animation and everything. The actual core game is completely unchanged if you don't have it. So again, you don't need it in English if you're not interested in the story, and you don't need the 4 megabyte RAM cartridge to enjoy it, but if you want that optimal experience, then those options are there for you to enhance it.
I've got a feeling that the load times might be faster as well with it. I can't remember. I'm sure I saw a video. I can't remember who did it, but there was a video comparing doing all the RAM card supported games, and it showed with and without. And I think the loading times are affected by the RAM card as well, obviously by different speeds. If you've got the 1 or 4, so even if you're playing the Japanese version, it's still worth plugging that brown cart in just for expediency and the load times. But absolutely phenomenal game. Looks phenomenal, sounds phenomenal, plays amazing. I mean, there's a lot of game in there, a lot of challenge, and even if you have whacks hundreds of quid on it, I think it's worth it. It goes for quite a bit. You'll probably, if you're trying to see it to the end on the default settings, you're probably going to be playing it for a long time.
It's tough as nails. Really, and even on the easiest difficulty setting, it doesn't it still gives you a challenge.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the enemies still swarm you. It's still, the bosses can be taken down with two supers, so they're a wee bit easy. Because the first boss is like a stone man.
Yeah.
And he's got like an axe and a club, and he throws the axe at you, but his weak point's on his chest, and he guards it.
Yeah.
But if you just use the two supers, you just melt right through them.
Yeah.
It's the same in the second stage. You fight this kind of odd looking, it's like a kind of mutant plant, like something Poison Ivy would understand on Batman. And you're kind of you're traversing down a kind of tunnel, and this thing comes up to either side, and the weak point's the head of the flower. And again, just smack it with two supers, and it's gone. It just melts and falls away.
But it still gets challenging after that. And the thing is, even from the get-go, on the easiest setting, the enemies just seem to be relentless. Like, because the first thing I want to do is I just want to hit the crystals and try and get better weapons. And then, you know, you don't really get much of a chance to do that. You really have to. It's not like I was playing R-Type the other day, and I was playing it with the Leo prototype, and you get to, obviously it's playing the Mega R-Type version of the Leo prototype, and you get to shoot the power-ups to change the colour of them if you're playing with the Leo. And you get a chance to do that with Cotton. It's just like, well, you want to shoot these, but you got to earn the right to do that. You've actually got to be decent to get that even on the easiest setting. So the cuteness of it is disarming to an extent. You know, it's very twee. It's very, but it's quite beguiling because it's actually quite it's absolutely tough as nails.
Even the grab mechanic in it as well. It's like you can grab enemies and throw them at the wave, because there's ones that come down that look like kind of wee fairies or pixies that come down in wee blue dresses, and you just grab one and just fire it straight back at them and use those to knock them out. But I think if you grab, is it the yellow crystals? If you grab and you throw them, it captures the green ones. It actually captures the enemy inside a bubble, and you can just shoot into them and just get a
I didn't know that.
Score. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to have to try that after this. I'm not the best at it. I really need to play a bit more.
Like if you grab the red crystals, excuse me, and you throw them, I think it actually goes out as a flame as well. You can fire them at enemies. Just as it's got so many clever ways to let you chain your score together. That's the thing about it. You can sit there and just shoot the waves and, you know, take your health power-ups and blah blah blah.
Well, that's all I do. All I do is I'm constantly trying to get my health back.
But you can, how funny though is the wee bonus bit, the T falls. You've got to grab, you've got to press B and grab them, you know, and you just try and get your wee health back to go back up again.
He's desperate to get them as well. So I need this health.
No, brilliant game. Brilliant. Highly recommend it.
Superb. And yes, so I think they're all bangers on here. So moving from the top of your list to the top of my list, it's a Saturn game that's probably on everyone's lips. One we haven't really talked about an awful lot, which is surprising, but that's Guardian Heroes. And this is a game which I think does use VDP2 quite a bit, and a lot of effects. It's got obviously you've got an enormous amount of characters on screen at times. You've got the 6-player battle mode, which is absolute carnage. And even when you play, and you can play co-op through the main campaign, obviously with the 30 stages, multiple routes, etc. But you've always got the Golden Warrior with you from, you know, the second stage onwards. So there's three of you, 2-player characters, and an NPC that works alongside you, and then you can get like up to 12 enemies on the screen at once. So it just turns into bedlam, and you're throwing fireballs, you know, casting lightning at things, and it just becomes absolute bedlam. But there's a little bit of slowdown but the game is just absolutely phenomenal to look at. And you've got stuff like, oh god, I can't remember her name, but the mage's cloak is transparent as well, and there's some wonderful effects in there. But yeah, Guardian Heroes is one of my favourite games in the system. It's top 15 at least, so top 10 with me. And this was the game that a few of my friends played. That convinced them to buy Sega Saturns for Christmas 1997. Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny. I mean, the story is that my friend Beagle, who we've been friends since school. I'm actually seeing him this weekend actually. He was like, "Oh, my parents are going out. Let's come around mine and we'll play N64. We'll play GoldenEye." And I was like, "Well, anyway, I'll bring my Saturn along." I said, "Yeah, if you want to. Well, we'll give it a go, but we're mostly going to play, you know, GoldenEye, WCW versus NWO, and Mario Kart." So I put the Saturn in first because I got there first, and we put the Guardian Heroes in, and literally the N64 didn't even get turned on. We were playing Guardian Heroes for a good 12 hours, I think it was, all the way into when the parents came home. We moved into the back room and we're still playing it into the early hours of the morning. Just the 6-player battle mode over and over again, like soft banning things like Village God wasn't allowed. You couldn't be him because he was broken. You could float to the top of the screen and just unleash lightning on everyone. But yeah, that was brilliant. And then 2 or 3 mates would bought Saturns at the back of that in 1997. Sadly, the Saturn didn't last much longer after that, but there we go.
I was going to say, mate, that you were putting that laser to the test with that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, they bought them. I think they got them for Christmas, and they were getting them for. I think they were getting them for like £100 with a ton of games with them. Like they had Sega Ages, Sega Rally, Virtua Fighter. They had so many. They'd get about 5 different games with them. And they loved them when they got them, but then they got them 98 straight afterwards when it was dead, basically.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. But there we go. Yeah, but there we go. But it's Guardian Heroes, mate. As I say, that was the game that sold the Saturn to them. And yeah, it was so good. Just wish they had got under the noses of other gamers at the time, because it really could have maybe made a difference. It was that good.
I mean, it's a game that's getting a lot more attention now than it ever did back then. I mean, even criminally, I didn't get it till a lot later, and I got it. The copy I got was from GameZone in Party. I must have paid about a tenner for it, and it was tatty. Like the case was just like a pre-owned bottom shelf in GameZone. Or why they want you to take in a game, they give it a number, and then you could swap it for a plus a $5 for a game of the same rate. And I just shut that, and like, holy shit, it's like you'd seen it in the Sega Saturn magazine, you could actually see it running.
Yeah.
It was like kind of like anime style, and the fact your character could go in and out as well. Like Golden Axe the Duel does something similar as well. Your character can kind of move in and out of the scene as well, to different kind of like tiers almost, like foreground and background. But as you say, there's so much going on, and battle mechanics are great. Just it should have got a lot more attention back then than it did.
Yeah, because it plays like a fighting game. I mean, it's basically a beat 'em up, you know, kind of Streets of Rage Golden Axe style, but you know, instead of free roaming up and down, you have to move across the plains.
Yep.
And the benefit of that is you use special moves. So you've got like charge attacks, quarter circle attacks, dragon punch attacks. So there's a huge move set for all the. Is it five playable characters? Yeah, 5 playable characters. And then you go into battle mode and you've got like 50 playable characters, because you can play as all the enemies as well. It's just, and then you've got you've got so many endings, 6 different endings. It's just so good. It's just absolutely phenomenal game. One of the best games of this generation. One of the best scrolling beat 'em ups ever made. No doubt in my mind. It's a shame that it just hasn't become kind of a household name or get the respect it deserves. And the Xbox port didn't really do it for me. But the changes in the art style, the changes to how it's set up, and the control changes really didn't sit right. And you can revert the control changes, but because they're the default option, I think it's just a lot of people played it and it's just like, yeah, it's good, but didn't get the respect it deserves. But like a lot of games, like Radiant Silvergun and others, Saturn's still the best way to play it.
Absolutely.
So moving on to your second pick, mate, I've got so much time for this game. It's one of my favourite shoot 'em ups ever made, and that is a port of the arcade game known as Rayforce, which was localized in Europe as Gunlock before being ported in Japan as You Got It Here as Layer Section, and getting a Western release as Galactic Attack. It is the game of many names, but whatever you call it, it's absolutely sensational, isn't it?
I put it on my list as Layer Section. I don't know. I might have to come off this call and go up and pick a different name on my Fenrir menu for what I'm calling it, because like that is crazy. I only ever knew it as Galactic Attack in the West and then Layer Section in Japan, but Rayforce, Gunlock. I mean, pick a name for God's sake.
It's like Aragorn, isn't it? I mean, he's Aragorn, Strider, Elisar, Estelle, Fungal, whatever his name is. It's so it's just
why?
Yeah, you can.
What are you doing?
You can understand. Well, the Saturn Western release was done by Acclaim.
That's right. Yeah.
So you can understand maybe different names between Japan and the West, but I don't understand why there's two different names in the arcade. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
But I mean, as a game, wow, top down, similar style to Radiant Silvergun, but has that really clever mechanic of you've got A and C are your laser attacks, and then B is your lasers which lock on. And you've always got this brilliant little kind of reticle, maybe 2 ships lengths ahead of you. So as you're flying left and right and moving up and down the stage to collect the gems that give you power-ups and whatnot, the lock-on happens automatically, so you can still be firing your laser and kind of roll your thumb over onto B to use some lasers as well to take the enemies you've locked onto out. But it's some of the effects on it as well. That, again, we talked about levels of depth in the stages previously. We caught too. It's similar with Layer Section as well. Like, you're in the first level, you fight that first kind of boss, that kind of transforming ship with the big long kind of rocket arms, and you blow those off. But you almost seem to be going through like a kind of time warp, almost like a kind of warp speed kind of state, because it's like you're fighting this thing, but it's moving into the kind of space, but there's this kind of like blues and red kind of like particle effect clouds coming at you, and you've got all that going on while this thing's firing its usual bullet hell array of bullets out. Then it's you blow off its 2 arms, and then once it's still finished spewing those out, it then hits you with these, I think it's like 2-pronged thin lasers that come out and just wipe you out if you just don't expect them, because you're dodging these bullets and then these things just go then your XYZ that act as your specials as well. It's just so much going on screen, and it just does not skip a beat at all. It's absolutely brilliant. Layer Section 2 is more 3D kind of. Yeah,
it's polygonal.
So it's, don't get me wrong, it's impressive as hell. It's really, really nice. Kind of going through the cities, and it's more kind of isometric in its angle to make use of the kind of the way the buildings are built up with polygons. But the first game is superb. Great soundtrack as well.
Yeah, I think the first game is the best game in the series for me, and it's absolutely stunning. It's a game that just doesn't stop giving you something from beginning to end, because like all the bosses are massive. The last stage is absolutely phenomenal. I love every minute of it. Love the music, and it looks outrageously good as well. It doesn't even slow down. Never slows down. One thing that I didn't realise, and obviously it's like I've never played it in its full glory, and the reason why is it was a few years ago that I watched a video, and it was comparing. It was like Layer Section, Saturn versus Saturn. I was like, well, what's this about? If you play it in Tate mode, if you flip your TV over, all the effects are that much better. Like they look absolutely phenomenal. Like when you're moving across kind of that planet, it's a lot more fluid and everything blends and animates so much more fluidly. It's not quite the same when you're playing it on a standard TV. It's almost a reason for me to flip the Triniton over, but I don't know if it would handle it, but it'd probably break.
Well, I've got a Dell monitor that I've got for work, and it actually flips.
Oh yeah.
Only problem is, it doesn't have a sound output because it only supports the Bluetooth soundbar, which we didn't get. So I could play it in tatty mode or tape mode, you know, tatty. Get a Scottish person to say tatty. Feel like Ali McCoist.
Potato mode.
Tatties. But I could put it in, I'll call it portrait mode to give myself some attempt at credibility. But I might even just try it, because if I hook it up to the capture card, I can then have the sound coming to the laptop.
Yeah.
So I might try that to see how different it does look, and play it in that mode.
Yeah, it does look absolutely phenomenal like that. Like even better, the game looks absolutely stunning anyway. The use of the sprites, the detail that's going on, just the effects, and like when you're locking on to the mechs that are like unloading off a big ship at the bottom, and you're targeting them all, and they're all flying up towards you, and you got to lock onto them before they get up, otherwise you've got to blast them and they can get you. And then you've got like the turrets, so you've got all these turrets underneath, and they're all firing at you. It's not quite bullet hell, but it is. It's still pretty intense.
Aye, some of the bosses will throw it. Like you compare it to like a Radiant Silvergun or an Ikaruga, it's nowhere near like that's just full screen. Like try to find your way through a maze to avoid all these kind of things. But no, it's not quite bullet hell, but it's still tough as nails. But really enjoyable. Yeah,
one of my favourite shooters ever. That is, without a doubt. Got it for a tenner.
Wow.
2003 in my box of Sega junk. I think I talked about this before. That had 2 Dreamcasts, a Mega Drive 2, Streets of Rage, a baseball game, RBA Baseball 93, had Die Hard Arcade, and it had Galactic Attack. I think that was all either a tenner or 20 quid or something like that. Came in a huge box. It's like the Dreamcast don't work, and I managed to get them all working.
Saying people don't realise, like, there was a period whenever people just gave this stuff away like junk.
It was the box literally said, and the eBay listing was Sega junk. Sega junk. I was like, oh, I'll have some Sega junk.
wonder if that person's ever thought back to that listing and went,
yeah.
How much does Galactic Attack go for now?
It's easily 80 plus, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the Mega Drive 2 that I've got is the one that I've got down there, and that it says the Dreamcast actually. The Dreamcast is right in front of me now. But the Mega Drive 2 is like at the bottom. It's got 40 power buttons, but it always worked for me. But the connection to the AC adapter is really loose, so whenever I play it, I have to kind of wiggle it to get it to work. I'm sure there's a more elegant solution, but and more elegant solution for a more civilized day. But no, it's fine for what I need it for. But there we go, mate. We move on to layer section. Fantastic. So the next one from my list is a kind of a cult classic. One that I think is getting an English translation that I haven't. Like, obviously, I've only played this in Japanese, but this is Princess Crown, mate. I've always wanted to play this one. I wanted to play it for years, and finally managed to get a copy of it 2 years ago. I really enjoyed what I was able to play of it, but the language barrier was still something that I struggled with a little bit. But my word, what a gorgeous game that is. The great big details, sprites, gorgeous backgrounds, just moves so fluidly. Love the battle system as well in it. It was just kind of the open areas where you have to navigate yourself around, like the castle and the towns and everything, where I struggled a little bit. But this was one that, in terms of the best looking, most impressive games on the Saturn, it's definitely one of them. And in terms of just sheer polish, presentation and gameplay, for me, an absolute must play for the system, I think.
Aye, it is gorgeous. It's not one I've put much time into. I have got it on the Fenrir. Looks lovely. The last update I had seen on the English translation was actually, it was one-time extension
Oh, okay.
back in September. Now, partly this translation's been 10 years in the making. It's been quite, quite an endeavour, but it was Damon McFerrin had reported that it appears to have faltered, and that was in September
Oh, right.
2023. So I don't know. Hopefully, someone picks it up and gets it up and running, because it is one that I'd love to see. I mean, Silhouette Mirage is another, which at the time of going to record this podcast, the Shiro boys had actually put a tweet out saying that Silhouette Mirage's in English translation is all but finished and available for download now. So, Princess Crown's one that I would love to see get done, get finished, because it looks stunning, but the kind of language barrier on there is quite preventative at times.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I've not sank any time. Pretty much why I've not been into Silhouette Mirage. It took me long enough to get past the first screen on Silhouette Mirage, the actual kind of retraining screen. I'm like, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah, I think Silhouette Mirage got to the third or fourth stage, and I just wasn't sure what to do. But it's. I mean, saying about putting time into Princess Crown, I put quite a few hours into it, but a lot of the sections where you have to talk to certain people and do certain things, and that was where I kind of drew a blank, and I started using an FAQ, and I thought, you know what, I'm sure a translation of this will manifest eventually. And part of me had an eye on, because it actually got a port to the PSP, or I think it was a port or a remake. So I was hoping that would either manifest, I'd either find a copy of that, or it'd manifest in its own Sega Saturn translation. They could borrow from that. But yeah, I'm hoping that it gets a translation, because everything that I played about it, I absolutely loved. And it was just one of these games where I thought I just really need to be able to play it in English. But if you've got plenty of time in your hands, but you don't mind wandering around aimlessly, or you want to use an FAQ, it's definitely one to pick up. It's absolutely stunning. I mean, the battle system, like it's almost like a beat 'em up fighting game sort of system. It's absolutely wonderful, and the presentation is absolutely gorgeous as well.
Aye, it's beautiful looking, but what Saturn 2D game isn't, let's be honest, but it's got a really nice art style about it. As you say, those big sprites, colourful backgrounds, good battle mechanics, but it's prohibitive in terms of, again, and that's the thing as well with these games, you can muddle get in. I suppose if you're someone who played a lot of import games back in the day, we used to do that a lot, muddle our way through, whether it was something as simple as buying Power Stone for the Dreamcast and muddling your way through the kanji menus, knowing that, that means options, that means easy, and but with something like this, where you end up, you're making choices and decisions in the game that you don't know what impact they're having, and that's whenever you start to wonder, is it really worth bothering?
Yeah, I mean, the first game that I remember buying Castlevania on the Saturn back in '98, whenever it was released, and I played the PS1 version and loved it, but I'd only played it at friends' houses, and even then I'd only played it for an hour max. So I went into the Saturn version just almost completely blind, and I would spend hours and hours and hours without having a clue what I was doing, just going around the map. Now I can play it and I know exactly where I'm going, because I've played it so many times, especially even in English. But back in the day, I spent forever playing it, and I was so powered up by the end because I spent so many hours wandering around aimlessly. I think if I was younger and I had the time, I would have put ages into this. I mean, it commands a decent chunk of money for the import version. It's not a cheap game. It's one I can't imagine it ever getting a Western release. Back in the day, I think it is too niche, but it is a game that people really should try out. But yeah, it's a stunning game, mate. But moving on, one of your picks is one that we absolutely have to talk about when we're talking about the power of the Saturn, the 2D power of the Saturn, and it's an early indication of how deep that power was. And that is a game that did come west and that everyone should know, but X-Men Children of the Atom. Well, I think when you first saw this, I remember seeing it in the arcade, or I think it was on Bad Influence or something. They were playing the arcade version, and then seeing it come to the Saturn, and it looking pretty much arcade perfect, at least to our eyes, it looked arcade perfect.
Yep.
And then there was all this talk about it's not coming to PlayStation because PlayStation can't handle it. I think PlayStation did eventually get a version port of it in 1998 or 7 or something.
Yeah, but it's
And
not anywhere near
nowhere
smooth.
near as. And I had Marvel Superheroes on my list originally and took it out for this. And I think this is a better example because Marvel Superheroes has a lot of slowdown in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is, super fast, huge sprites, colourful backgrounds. It's basically got everything, and everyone just seems massive in it. Cyclops with his optic blast. The characters seem bigger in this than like in the Versus games, I think. Do you get that feeling?
I think so. Like Juggernaut as well. He seems to be come across as being a lot bigger now. Again, back then we never had 60 hertz, so like even playing it in 50 hertz with the borders and whatnot,
Yeah.
And being a wee bit slower, it still felt that it moved at a decent pace. But
Yeah.
it was literally like back then you were aware of the X-Men like cartoons that were on, the comic books obviously. This was like watching like a cartoon. You were playing like a cartoon. The level of animation was just, it was unbelievable. Again, I didn't get this one. Obviously, I didn't get my own Saturn until at 96, so this was one that I would have picked up much later. Again, good old Game Zone. My copy was relatively cheap and was very equally tatty in terms of, it's tatty again, but I mean there's something different this time. Tatty, not Tate. Got any subtitles for this podcast at this rate?
It's James talking about tatties again.
Oh my god, it's going to become a fucking meme. But it's like, it was just looking at it. It's absolutely stunning. It doesn't skip a beat. Doesn't need any of. We didn't get any 4MB RAM cartridge over here, but again, it just, what a game.
Yeah, it was
all the moves, all the animations. It just looks brilliant.
Just the way, like, when you see the Sentinel, and he's like, his arm, it's like bits are moving in and out, and then he's like Juggernaut, and his fingers are going.
That's right, because these arms not flying, and they can, and he does all that as you're saying, and it's like he gets ready to.
Yeah, he's absolutely massive. It takes up most of the screen because it's not in another fighting game till MVC2, and even then, because the screen, everyone's smaller in MVC2 because the play area is bigger. Like in Children of the Atom, he just seems absolutely massive. And you stick him in against Juggernaut, who's like the sub boss. But the game is absolutely nails as well. It's so tough. It's definitely the toughest Capcom fighter I think I've ever played, to be honest. Like Marvel Superheroes is an absolute doddle by comparison. And Street Fighter is Street Fighter, and the Vampire Savior, Darkstalkers games you can play through them pretty easily. But Children of the Atom is brutally hard, I think, at times.
It's like they kind of set the bar up here for like difficulty just to kind of get out the gate. The games have become, lack of a better word, more kind of dumbed down, I think, as I've went on. Some characters are ridiculously overpowered as well, whereas I felt in this like everyone was quite well balanced.
Yeah.
Even if you're fighting a lot larger characters, like Wolverine, that was my kind of go-to. His Berserker Barrage thing, that would just cut through people, but I've always found that was a more powerful move later on. But it's just
it plays
so good.
Plays differently because it's Berserker Barrage is a super move in this, isn't it? Whereas it's got that kind of I can't remember. It's like a drill claw or something. It's not like a proper quarter circle forward or anything. You press forward and the two punches or two high buttons. So it plays quite differently. But I was a fan of Iceman and Cyclops were my two. But there were some great characters in there, like Silver Samurai. Colossus is fantastic in there, and what's his name? God, who's the guy with all the tentacles? Why is his name eluding me?
Is it Omega Red?
Omega Red, yeah. So you don't have your usual usual characters in there. You've got a nice mix of immediately recognisable, like your Psylocke, your Wolverines, your Cyclops, your Juggernauts, and then you've got your other ones like your Silver Samurai, your Silver Red, and your Spirals and everything like that. I actually got my copy probably 98 because I always wanted to get it, and I got mine in Computer Exchange in CEX, the one in Rathbone Street in London. And what they had, I remember this really well, is they had wallets, like wallets of just CD only games.
Aye.
And I got Children of the Atom and Baku Baku. It was a Japanese version of Children of the Atom and Baku Baku Animal, and they were literally like £2 each. But I sold X-Men. I sold X-Men when I got my Dreamcast, and then I bought it again, the PAL version, about 7-8 years ago.
PAL cover is gorgeous though.
Yeah,
really
so's the Japanese version though. The Japanese cover is gorgeous as well. Yeah, it was just a game that it just ticks every single box. It was brilliant to play, as Capcom games are and were. It was gorgeous to look at. It was a game that the PlayStation couldn't do, an early indication of what the Saturn could. And the music was phenomenal as well. There's a video recently that Maximilian Dude did called "Rate the Player Select Music," and it's like 2 hours long. And they're going up, and I think they're putting different theme tunes on, and then they put the character select theme on from X-Men: Children of the Atom, and they're up going dancing to it, just rocking out to it. And they give it a 9 out of 10, though, but only because the X-Men versus Street Fighter version is even better. But yeah, it does everything right. Just one of the quintessential games in the system. Sadly, I think it gets overlooked a lot these days for the versus games.
It does. I was just going to say that it's strange that alone being such a good port as it wasn't the catalyst for the West to get more of the.
Yeah.
Also, we got Alpha and Alpha 2, didn't get 03 or Alpha 3, and didn't get any of the versus games. Now, whether or not Kota didn't sell well enough to justify that, but you would think the reception to it would have been decent enough, and it proved that the Saturn could more than handle the size of sprites, the level of animation. But
Yeah.
it just never came to fruition, which is it's strange. You're right, it does get overlooked. People just go straight to, like, if you mention Capcom 2D fighters on Saturn, people go straight to X-Men versus Street Fighter.
Mhm.
You very rarely hear anybody who will bring up Kota first.
Yeah.
It's kind of forgotten about, which is unfair because it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I don't think that it underperformed. I think it actually sold well because copies of it aren't unaffordable, really. I think it
Which
goes
is an
for
indication of how many copies are out there then.
yeah. I don't think it goes for north of 40 quid. I got mine. I was really lucky with mine 7 or 8 years ago. Whenever I got it in a bundle of 6 games for 30 quid. So on average, cost me a £5. But I still don't think it commands that much. So I think it's probably the Marvel Superheroes port that didn't sell well. That's the one that's quite expensive. And I think that's probably where they thought, well, maybe there's not this market. Maybe we won't bring the 4 megabyte RAM card over. But that's probably a discussion for another day.
Yeah, 48 quid on CEX for a boxed copy at present.
Oh,
So
wow, it's gone up then.
It's gone up a bit, but you know, it's kind of similar prices to what it probably was back then. You know,
Yeah.
not far off. It probably 45, 40 quid. So
It's not far off the Alpha 1. It commands quite a bit. Alpha 2, more popular, is about 20 quid. Or it was probably about 40 now. But anyway, mate, sticking with fighting games, the one I wanted to talk about was King of Fighters 96. Now, another game, this one, actually probably the only one, one of 2 on this list that actually necessitates the use of a RAM card. You do need a RAM card for this one, but the 1 megabyte one will do you. I actually first played King of Fighters 96 on the PlayStation 1. And I'd heard about King of Fighters 95 in Sega Saturn magazine. I'd seen the pictures of it, and I didn't know that much about it, but there was me going, oh, King of Fighters, what's this? Wait a minute, that's Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury, and that's Joe Higashi. Oh, that's all Fatal Fury, but wait a minute, aren't those guys from Art of Fighting? Hang on, those guys are from Akira Co. And I was like, oh my god, I need this game. At the time, I couldn't find a copy of King of Fighters 95, but I didn't get to play. I got to play King of Fighters 96 first on the PlayStation. And the first thing I was just like, oh, how long is this going to take to load? Obviously the characters change every match. And then I ended up picking up the trilogy box set for the Saturn in early 1990. No, it would have been late 97. I picked up the trilogy box set, which had King of Fighters 95, 96, 97. And 96, because it was the first one I'd ever played, and because there's an awful lot of fan service in there, it's kind of, I think it gets looked down on a fair bit because 95 was kind of fresh and new, 97 is kind of very refined, 96 is obviously is kind of looked down on for some reason, but it's one of my favorites as the music borrows an awful lot from other games. It's got kind of an overpowered boss team in there, but it's just one of the games where it's actually better than the Neo Geo CD port. Has much more animation than the PlayStation version. The load times are actually faster than the PlayStation 1 and the Neo Geo CD by quite a margin. It's got the arranged soundtrack, which is absolutely phenomenal. And it's one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time, especially the Isaka kind of hero team theme. And yeah, it's just one of my favorites, one of my top fighting games ever, top 50 or anything. But out of all the fighting games, there's an awful lot in there, and it's up in. Well, I did my top 50 fighting games once, and I think this was like 20 something. It's phenomenal, mate. I don't know if you've had a chance to play much of it.
See, this is where I'm going to get flamed because I don't like SNK fighting games.
Oh, but how? I love SNK fighting games.
I think the art style is gorgeous. Like, won't deny it. I'm not saying they're bad games. I just can't get on with them. I just like. I think I don't know if it's because of like years of ingrained Street Fighter moves or Virtua Fighter moves or whatever. But mate, I am horrendous. Like a 5-year-old could like destroy me at any of the King of Fighters games or any of the Fate. I just cannot pull off any moves. I literally feel like I'm not. Is this controller broken or something? Or why can't I do anything? I'm so bad at them, honestly.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to, just get good, but I just never get on with them at all.
They're a lot more demanding than Capcom fighting games. The input and special moves are a lot stricter. Especially like it's quite funny because I love the series and I bought King of Fighters 15 for the Xbox Series X. Was that this year? Or was it last year? I'm trying to remember. But yeah, it must have been last year. And loved it. But you play that and then you play Street Fighter 6. And if you're playing with a stick, you can sort of just, as long as you go from somewhere down there to somewhere over there, press a punch button, you'll do a fireball. But King of Fighters 15 is you have to hit all of those markers in order to do the special move. And I find myself when I go back to King of Fighters from Street Fighter, there's a lot of adjustment to get like you get. I don't want to say lazy. I don't want to say you get a bit lazy, but you get a little bit more trying to be efficient and do the special moves faster. And King of Fighters is like, no, you will do these correctly, or you won't do them at all.
Street Fighter kind of gives you a helping hand. Basically, it's a lot more lenient.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that as well. There's times I can pull off like dragon punches in Street Fighter, and I'm like, I didn't do that properly. It's like
Street Fighter 4. If you have an arcade stick, especially, you notice this. To do a dragon punch, you don't have to do down, forward, punch. You can literally just do down, forward, and punch, and it will do a dragon punch. That's how lenient Street Fighter is in comparison.
Aye. No, but it's the same, mate. It's just, what you're saying there about it being like, I've looked at special moves and I've sat there and I've tried to do them. Like, I can't get these to work. I'm like, no, so just.
Yeah. No, it's understandable, mate. It's quite demanding, and it took me a while to adjust And there's an awful lot more focus on, because you've only got the 4 buttons, there's a lot more of a focus on command normals, but it's still, for me, it's one of the best fighting games of the generation, which anyone that lived through the 32-bit generation will know how good the competition was there. But for me, I think it's right on the top. Just has everything. The characters are incredible. You've got so many recognizable characters in there, like the Fatal Fury guys, Art Fighting guys, Akari Warriors, Cycle Soldier. Then you've got the bosses like Geese Howard, Mr. Big, and Kaiser, or Krauser rather. Then you've got the amazing soundtrack, and the boss at the end is absolutely brutal as well. I mean, that's the other thing. The games, I found them tough to complete back in the day because the bosses are just absolutely relentless and overpowered. And you went, oh, it's my 3 guys versus this one. Well, I'll walk this. No, they're gonna cheese their way through you and absolutely obliterate you. But once you figure it out, it's very rewarding. So yeah, an absolute favourite of mine, mate.
I mean, the thing with the King of Fighters and Fatal Fury games is, like, them being on Saturn was, it almost made them, for me, in terms of they felt more accessible in terms of getting them, because, like, there was a point whenever they were only on, obviously, like Neo Geo and the kind of cartridge form, and there was a specialist game shop that only dealt with, like, imports and specifically Neo Geo. I've mentioned this before, just off at the corner of Byers Road in Glasgow. But you would go in and, like, you were just unattainable. Like, the cartridges were stupid money, and the Neo Geo was expensive. It just felt like totally, you're never going to play these games. You don't have the money for these. These are beyond you. So I obviously never. Was it 95 that came in the white box over here that we got with the deck?
Yes,
with the ROM cart. Yeah. So I remember seeing that come out, and that was like, oh, what's this? £45? Like, it's affordable. It's like, so. It was good that it kind of took it away from the realm of, you know, the very elitist kind of Neo Geo mega cartridge super prices. Yeah. But as I say, I just need to go back and try and get into them, because I'm not saying they're bad games at all. It's like, I personally just have never been able to get on with them.
Yeah, I think 96 is probably the best place to start. 95 is really tough. Even when I go back to, yeah, really tough, like ruthless. I mean, even when you fight Regal at the end, he's absolutely merciless. 96, I think, is a nice balance, a little bit more forgiving, and then it gets a bit tougher in 97 again. So yeah, 96. I think that's the thing. 96 seems to go a little bit more kind of fan servicey, a little bit more casual. And it's kind of like a celebration of all things SNK, whereas 97 is really odd because it strips out the music and gives you lots of ambient fighting sounds.
All right.
So, like, you do this fight at a fairground, and rather than like a fairground theme song, you've got this sound coming out of the side where the band are playing. It's the band actually playing the song. Where you fight in, I think you fight in Bali, and they're doing this. They've obviously got some sort of festival going on in the background, and there's just people playing drums and people going and it's all very much just the sounds of the environment you're in, and that is really cool in itself. But the arranged soundtrack on 96 just amazing, mate. But yeah, if you're going to start with one, I think that's the one to get into.
Right, I will do, mate. I'll make you that promise. I'll put it on the friend here and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, stick the difficulty all the way down. And I think the story is actually in English as well.
All right, okay.
Yeah, which is odd. It's very badly translated, full of spelling mistakes.
One day I was Chinese. Nothing will beat that shit.
No.
Sorry, nothing will beat that.
No. Well, mate, that's me waxing on about King of Fighters long enough. But we're going to stick to fighting games for the next one, the next pick on your list. And this is the game that everyone should know, and this is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which... what a port on the Saturn this is. It's only available in the collection, isn't it? You can't buy this separately.
Yeah, so it's disc 1 of the Street Fighter 2 collection. And you get Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. But, oh man, what a port. Now, I know you can get the Japanese only Super Street Fighter 2 X matching edition.
Yeah, for matching
service on Dreamcast. And there's a wee bit of kind of disagreement I think certain people prefer the Saturn version, some prefer the Dreamcast. For me, I had them both on, going between them. I don't know if it's just because of A, how the Saturn looks through the Rad2X, and B, playing with the Saturn controller, but the Saturn version just felt so much better to me. And it just, oh man, it just looks. I mean, I remember seeing Super Street Fighter 2 for the first time in the arcade. And this was whenever there was a shop in Glasgow, a big department store. It was called Lewis's, and it became Debenhams, which is now shut down after the whole liquidation thing that they went through, unfortunately. So it's a big, empty, massive department store in the middle of Glasgow with nothing. But it used to have an amazing toy section and an arcade section on the top floor. And I remember, like, went up there one day in the town of Munko, and I glanced over, and all I seen was that whole Ryu, the lightning. I'm like, what's this? And there's the whole fireball, and it was like Super Street Fighter. So I was like, oh my god, like, what is this? I just love how, like, super colourful, super detailed the backgrounds are. The fighters are big and chunky, just like they were in the arcade. There's like, also the Mega Drive port, as great as it is, the sprites were a lot smaller. Amiga version, not going into that. But even if you remember, like, Super Street Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive, and even Super Street Fighter on the Amiga, really, really small fighters. But this is just, I can't tell any that. Literally is arcade perfect. And I know you're going, well, it should be, because of how old the kind of game would have been, you know, with the power that's in the Saturn. It should be able to do that, but it just doesn't miss a beat. It's rapid, looks great. Even if whenever I fought Guile earlier, it looked like something out of Cyberpunk, because he looked pure, like, it looked like that too much fake tan and red hair. I'm like, what's happened to Guile here, man? It's like, what has happened to him? Like, it's so good. It's such a, even just what I've said before on here, like with Virtua Fighter 2, I like to put it on and just leave it in watch mode, just to and just to marvel at it. That Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo port on the Saturn, I can leave that running in attract mode and just look at it. It looks great. So for me, the Saturn port is better than the 2X for matching service on Dreamcast.
Yeah, now you've done it a bit of a disservice, because you say, oh, the Saturn should be able to do that, absolutely no problem. But I think what not a lot of people realise is that Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is what we're talking about, both done on the CPS2 board rather than the CPS1, so it's upgraded hardware, and the level of animation and detail, especially around the new challenges, and then especially the new animations, etc., are a step above what anything before was capable of. The first port of Super Turbo actually came to the Panasonic 3DO, and even that couldn't handle the level of parallax scrolling. Like, there was hardly any parallax in there. It's missing loads of animation. Had an amazing soundtrack, but yeah, and it came to the Saturn, and the Saturn port still isn't quite arcade perfect. And Super Turbo is an interesting game, because it seems to have had more remakes than ports. So you had Turbo Revival on the Game Boy Advance. You had what was the remastered one called on the Xbox 360 and PS3? Street Fighter 2
Hyper Remix or something like that.
Remix, yeah, that's it. Yeah, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Remix. You got Hyper Street Fighter 2. You got Ultra Street Fighter 2 on the Switch. It doesn't have very many ports, and I think the Saturn version kind of is very easy by comparison, and the Saturn version is my favorite in a way that the version of Third Strike on the Dreamcast is my favorite port of Super Street Fighter. It's my favorite port of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and they're not necessarily, they're pretty far away from arcade perfect. In fact, Third Strike gets a lot of vitriol in the fighting game community because they say it's a garbage port because it's so different. But for me, mate, it's my favourite version of Super Turbo. I think it's the most playable. It's not brutal. Obviously, I've got the cab there, the arcade 1-up, which has got Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo in it. And I've also got the Street Fighter 2, the Street Fighter collection for the Xbox. Both of them have got the cardinal sin of having the arcade original, which always had the 8-star difficulty, regardless of what, the bug that made it on the hardest setting. So in the Saturn version, I can pretty much every time, if I'm playing as Ryu on the default difficulty, I can get to Akuma and get through it without losing the round. I can't get past like stage 3 on the arcade version because it's so broken. So yeah, it's stunning for the Saturn. Better than any other port that generation. Better than the 3DO port. Better than the PS1 port. Only outdone by the Dreamcast port that came later. And in terms of raw ports of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, it's still pretty much up there with the very best.
Have you seen the CD32 port of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo?
Do you know what? I didn't think it looked that bad.
Looks great until it starts moving. Mate, seriously, anybody who hasn't seen that, get on YouTube after you finish listening and watching this and check it out and prepare to be appalled.
That's not the one with the really funky box art, is it?
It's basically missing like tons of anime. I think the development time was like ridiculously short on it. It's like whenever the characters go to jump, like the jump animation's like missing for the second half of it. So like characters just the hitboxes are off. Just honestly, it's like you should just watch it. It's awful.
Yeah, I've seen. There's some people on X or Twitter that were talking about how it's actually a decent port. I remember I hear different things like on Battle of the Ports. That they occasionally talk. They talk about that and said it was a pile of crap. But then there's people on X or Twitter saying it was good. I've just sent you the box art for it, which is absolutely hilarious. Like T-Hawk kind of punching the sky. Akuma with a really derpy face, and for some reason DJ looming in the background smiling. It's all very bizarre. It's absolutely bonkers, mate.
What is this?
I know. There's some sort of nuclear explosion going on in the background. It's absolutely bonkers.
Oh my word.
Courtesy of Game Tech.
Yeah. It's, as I say, like the jump animations, this just so bad, honestly. No. But I know I had the Saturn version on before we came out to record and just spent a good bit of time on it. It's just so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. My biggest issue with the Saturn version is that the load times for the music take a while. As you'll get to, like when you get to the post-fight screen, they'll be there for like half a second, just like looking battered and saying the stuff, and it'll be silence. And then all of a sudden it goes.
I didn't notice that. I need to go back and try it.
Yeah, that's a minor niggle for me, but otherwise,
I thought the load times were pretty good.
Yeah, you don't notice them much. I think they're actually worse in the in Capcom Generations Volume 5. I think they're more noticeable in that compared to.
Aye, and that's only Standard World Warriors Champion Edition and Turbo. The load times in that and you don't get, if I remember, you don't get the. You don't get the whole.
You do, but it just takes longer. It's one of those ones. But if you hold at the A button and it will keep tapping it to skip it, by the time they clash together, the music hasn't loaded in. So that's it. It's just the CD access times, but it's better than the PlayStation version. The PlayStation's even worse for that sort of stuff. I mean, I've got the Street Fighter collection on PS1. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper than getting Capcom Generations on the Saturn, and that takes a long time to load. So yeah, another demonstration of the Saturn's prowess. That one. Moving on to the next one I've got on the list, mate. I've got Story of Thor 2. A game which I played through to completion a few years back for the first time. I'd not actually played it an awful lot. This was kind of before any ODEs, so I didn't have an ODE. Saturn emulation was kind of ropey still, but my God, I paid over 30. I think it's 35, 40 quid for this. And I loved every minute of it. It's absolutely gorgeous. The graphics on it, it's very much got a very almost like art, like pastel coloured look. The effects are amazing. The animation is gorgeous. The music it's really cool, ambient music, and then the gameplay it's a great evolution of like the Mega Drive original Story of Thor or Beyond Oasis. And I put a lot of time into it. It is quite, it can be quite confusing and it can be quite hard to find your way sometimes. But when it's at full swing, it's an absolutely stunning game, and it's a shame that it doesn't really get the recognition it deserves. A lot of people kind of seem to forget about it these days.
Aye, the art style was beautiful on it. I know what you mean. It's again not one I've put any real time into. Again, I've put it on the ODE. I think that kind of whole thing about you end up digitally hoarding games if you get an ODE. You fling everything you can find on it. I've heard of that. I'll try it. It's about Legend of Oasis, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
Aye. Again, one I need to actually sink some time into and try. I've only had it on briefly, but I know what you mean about the kind of art style for it. It's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's an absolutely gorgeous game, mate, and it's not perfect. As I say, it's quite it's the wayfinding is quite difficult sometimes, and the way that the 3D, it's obviously a top-down game. It's a 2D game. Everything in it's 2D, but it's everything's top-down, and sometimes it can be quite hard to judge, where you're jumping on bits of scenery. But still, it's absolutely phenomenal. And the sprite scaling, sprite rotation effects in there, the giant bosses, the animation, the effects in there, it's all just absolutely gorgeous with a great soundtrack, great gameplay, excellent story. And one I really need to start again. Really, I've got so many that I need to get back to. Second the other day, I need to start Panzer Dragoon again. But yeah, I'd love to start playing Story of Thor again. Or maybe you play it, mate, and I'll live vicariously through you.
Aye, because that's the thing as well. I'd like to, because it would be nice to find something different. Which, as I said, is a problem whenever you do just put everything on an SD card and just kind of, you've got it. Pardon me, sitting there. But I'm looking for something to kind of not sit and fire into in kind of 1 or 2 days, but just something I could go into that's got a bit of a story. Something, because going back and playing Panzer Dragoon Saga, which I have been, kind of going on to disc 3 now, it's like I've done that so many times, and you can fall in that trap where you get comfy with certain retro games. I think it's like, even though you've got means of playing any way you want, you fall into that trap and get a bit kind of comfy and playing your old favourites. But I've seen that Story of Thor, Thor 2 several times, and the art style jumped out at me, because again, like a lot of Saturn 2D stuff, it is like literally watching animation be controlled by you, and I think the Saturn was the kind of first console that really did that so convincingly that you felt like you were controlling anime. I know that on Mega Drive we've had great examples of 2D, like Robocop versus Terminator and Aladdin and Lion King and stuff like that, where the animations were great and the representation of the character was brilliant on screen. But I think I might be a candidate for. So that's 2. I've got King of Fighters 96 to give a chance, mate, and I've got Story of Thor 2. But for that there, to actually have a kind of more story-driven game and something just I can come back to and progress a story, which is something I've not done for a long time. Yeah,
it's worth persisting with. I'd recommend having a guide handy, because there are times when I got stuck quite a bit and it wasn't immediately clear where to go. And it's fine, you can, because you do level up in it to a degree, so it's fine to wander around for a bit, but after a while you do kind of want to get on with it, so definitely have a guide handy. But what you're saying, spot on, mate. We do get comfortable. I mean, case in point, when we were before we were going to record this episode, I obviously had some internet issues. My Sky broadband was down, and you was like, well, I'm gonna play this, and sent me a picture of Sega Rally. And obviously with my internet down, I can't play anything on my Steam library, on my Xbox Game Pass or anything. So what did I do? Out of every game on my Saturn Fenrir and on the shelf behind me, I picked up Street Fighter Alpha 2 to play for about 1,000th time. So we're both falling into our comfort zone there. So maybe a bit of homework. I'll play a bit more Cotton 2 as well. But
we're educating each other as we go. That's it.
Yeah, and viewers, listeners, make sure you give these games a go as well. And then I think the last 2 are definite highlights. So back to your list again, and you picked an absolute doozy. One that was talked about quite a lot on social media recently, and that is the Saturn port of Metal Slug, which is a frankly astonishing port. Again, not arcade perfect. Has a bit of slowdown.
It does.
Lost a bit of animation, but again, very similar to King of Fighters '96. It easily outdoes the PlayStation version, and in many ways actually outperforms the Neo Geo CD version as well. It's obviously you need the 1 megabyte RAM card to run it, but it's a absolutely fantastic port. A game that I have wanted probably since 1996 and never could find it, and these days I just can't afford it, but I've got it in the Ephemeris, so there we go.
That's what it's there for, mate. I mean, actually, Metal Slug's one that I did import way back, and as I said, when I got my Dreamcast, I started kind of retrospectively importing Saturn stuff, and you unlocked a memory. That just goes to show you how much I started holding because prices were so cheap to get stuff from Japan. See that King of Fighters triple pack you mentioned? I bought that. I literally, you just unlocked it, because I used to go on eBay and buy anything. I remember the box for that.
Yeah.
I literally, it flashed into my mind whenever you said it. I was like, oh, wow, I had that. But Metal Slug I actually had as well. Didn't cost much. Japanese imports, didn't they? Back in at the end of the Saturn's life. But there is a bit of slowdown whenever the screen gets busy. But in terms of animation, it looks great. It captures and keeps all the humour. I was talking to you. I literally, it's you shouldn't be laughing playing a game essentially set in a war zone, but the wee enemies and the things that they do, like whenever you know yourself later on in the first stage, there's like kind of boats that you know, there's 3 platforms, there's boats that go by, and you lob the grenades down. The second boat that comes in for the right hand side is a wee soldier lying sunbathing. And then you lob a grenade on him, and then he's on fire and he falls in the water, and he's deck chairs there. And then the boats kind of go up like the kind of Titanic, and they start to, and the wee guy hangs out a pump and he starts trying to pump the water.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so many wee characteristics, like even when you get like the flamethrower and the wee guys are coming in through parachute and you can burn them at the sky. It's just so many wee touches that are just so brilliantly done that just make the game so much more enjoyable. But whenever you're fighting kind of bosses, and in particular the kind of the end of the first second stage, whenever you actually get into the Metal Slug kind of tank for the first time, and you kind of go up like a kind of mound, and then you fight that kind of first kind of like tank looking thing.
Yeah.
And it's at that point whenever you're pressing your rockets and you feel a wee bit of input lag and the frame rate starts to kind of stutter a bit, but very similar actually to In the Hunt, which was also a candidate on my list as well, which got dropped. And I remember actually talked to John Linneman about this a while ago on Twitter, because he was talking about the Saturn port of In the Hunt. I think he was saying he prefers that to the PlayStation version, even though the Saturn version's got some slowdown.
Yeah.
But that was a good couple of months ago, and it's similar to that in that it does everything else so well that you can sort of forgive the moment, but it's just because you get big explosions and very big sprites, and you do get that kind of slight bit of slowdown. But in the main, everything else about the game just runs brilliant. As you say, it's not totally arcade perfect. There are like kind of animations missing, but you need to really nitpick to point them out. But it's just so much fun. And again, a game that was synonymous with the Neo Geo, you know, so again, for that to come onto a more consumer friendly platform was great. But it's a great game. I love that. Metal Slug, brilliant.
Yeah, there's so many little touches in there. It's just got so much character when you've saved the hostages and everything. I've never beaten it on the Saturn. I've never beaten the Saturn version. I bought it on Steam and played it co-op on Steam with a friend, but it was just like he just kept hitting the add credits button on Steam when you get to the last boss. I don't know if I could survive that last boss, because it was absolutely brutal. But it's just such a fantastic game. It's interesting you mentioned In the Hunt, because that's one kind of like when I was looking at my list, and I had Don Pachi on there as well. I love Don Pachi.
Don Pachi.
Yeah, but Don Pachi and In the Hunt are arguably better on PlayStation and don't utilize the Saturn quite right. Dodon Pachi, I think, is better on the Saturn. But yeah, it's interesting that John still prefers the Saturn version of In the Hunt, or I can't remember what the Japanese name is called, but yeah, it's
one thing about In the Hunt, sorry mate, it was just, if anybody is watching this and they want to play In the Hunt, this is just a wee tech tip. Or if you have a Fenrir, the PAL version won't load past the publisher screen. So whenever it's got an added screen for the Western publisher, and it locks up at that and doesn't play. So if you're going to play In the Hunt on your Saturn and you've got a Fenrir, put the Japanese version on, it works fine.
I'll have to remember that then. But mate, we're down to the last game on the list, and I just thought, you know, I had this second on my list, and I thought, well, we'll end with a bit of a bang, and yeah, it's Dragon Force, you know, and I've listened to people talk about this the other day actually, and people saying 100 sprites on screen, 200 sprites on screen. Oh, I think a lot of people always forget that there's two generals on there as well, so it's actually, you know, 202. Well, I suppose you only ever get one general at most on screen, but it's like 201 sprites on screen. And mate, this is just a marvel to me still. I remember seeing this on a Sega Flash demo disc, and it was just a video demo, and just watching these gigantic armies run across the field and clash with each other, and it's incredible. It doesn't slow down one bit, and even today, you know, what is it, 96 that came out, with 27 years on, and I don't think there's anything out there that's quite like it. It's an absolutely phenomenal game. Sega Lord X's favourite Saturn game, if I remember correctly as well.
I part of me thinks that Dragon Force was just somebody at Sega, like, was somebody taking the piss and just thinking, let's just see how much we can throw at this thing to see what it can do.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on, but it's not as if they've just done that and there's not a good game. There's a brilliant game behind it as well, and also it did get a sequel, which is also now been English translated.
Yeah.
So you can now play Dragon Force 2 as well. But it is a real, just a test of the Saturn sheer 2D grunt.
Yeah, it really is.
It is. It really is.
It's and yeah, I think it probably did. It's one of these things like that probably did start as a tech demo. Like Daytona USA was a tech demo for the Model 2, and then that evolved into Daytona USA. And Dragon Force is probably like, yeah, let's see how many soldiers we can get on screen at once. And then they introduce more units, and there's just an unreal amount of depth to it because there are so many different units. You've got the whole world map. You can choose from one of 8 kingdoms and characters. You've got 8 storylines. I think it's been so long since I played it all the way to the end, because I played it with every single character, but I think there's like an extra story at the end. It's just absolutely phenomenal. The music's great. It looks like no other game, but I do love the art style of it. Kind of these, like the kind of anime characters, the anime portraits, and kind of the chibi characters with the big eyes and no other facial features. And then you've got like you know, you've got your soldiers and your cavalry and your archers and your mages. And then I used to always have loads of harpies. I think they were well overpowered. And then because they would just fly around and just like claw at people. And, the little soldiers would be trying to stab the floor, and they're like, and then you had the dragons right at the end. And if you get the dragons, then no one can really beat you, but you need them to beat the final bosses. And it's just so good, mate. One of the greatest games of its generation. Again, one that people seem to forget about, apart from the Sega Saturn faithful. Again, a game that didn't sell well, and I was looking for a PAL copy the other day, and it was 180 quid, and I was just like, oh, for goodness sake. Because I actually had the PAL version back in 97, and I traded it because I played it so much, and I'd done every single story multiple times. It was one of the games that I traded towards the Dreamcast, and it was like Anchorman throwing the burrito out the car window. I immediately regret this decision.
But that's what we did back then, mate.
Yeah.
It's like it's the same whenever after I got the original Xbox, like I went all in on that, and I just remember taking like umpteen PS2 games into Game Station just to get credit to buy more Xbox games.
Yeah.
It's like your old games were just currency to get new stuff. You know, you weren't thinking about 30 years later how much they'd be worth.
I know. It's still Dragon Force and Dracula X, Symphony of the Night were the two that I traded, and I traded quite a few more, but they were the big ones. My mate Charlie I was talking about earlier traded in Radiant Silvergun and Deep Fear, the power copy of Deep Fear as well.
The thing is, I paid 115 quid for Radiant Silvergun, and that was back in the day. So what you compare that to, well, obviously using inflation and comparing for price now, what the hell is 115 quid now?
Yeah, I know.
You know,
Radiant Silvergun's a really odd one because back in like 2004, when the Xbox was around, and I used to go on the Edge forums a lot, and someone's because I remember, this is why I remember it, because one of the forum posters had a what's it called at the bottom, footer, strapline, whatever it was, saying I'll never sell my copy of Radiant Silvergun ever, because at the time the game was going for 150 quid. But if you try and look at Radiant Silvergun now, it's broadly the same price. It's like it peaked so early and didn't go up anymore.
Aye, it's kind of hit its ceiling.
Yeah.
Aye, but another brilliant game.
Yeah. We'll have to cover Radiant Silvergun, maybe a future episode on hybrid games. But mate, that brings us to the end of the 10 games that we thought were some of the Saturn's 2D best, that really utilised the power and showed what a 2D powerhouse it was. We could easily do another 10, 20, probably 100 2D games, but these are the ones we could easily do probably 50 fighting games.
Well, aye, pretty much.
But mate, that brings us to the end of the topic today. It's been, as always, mate, it's been an absolute blast to talk through these with you. And once again, I'm finding myself wanting to go and play these after talking about them.
The thing is, I've got an empty house, mate, so I can.
Oh, you can. I've got a day tomorrow, so I'll get to bed soon. But I'll have to wait until probably Sunday to get my hands on some of these. But viewers, listeners, hope you've enjoyed listening to us talk wax lyrical about these 2D Saturn gems. Let us know if you've enjoyed this. Do you want us to talk about more 3D games, more 2D games? What about hybrid games like Radiant Silvergun, which you've put polygons and 2D backgrounds? Let us know. You can get in contact with us via the comment section below. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, because that really helps the channel. And if you really enjoy what we do, think about becoming a member. You know, from the just 99p, there's all sorts of perks that we give for the various tiers that we have within the Sega Guys membership. And that goes from exclusive hidden behind the scenes content that you may see, outtakes and gameplay footage that we thought we might share for our members, as well as priority viewing on content and having a say in what we bring to the Saturn later. But James, if we want to give a shout out to our premium members who have make a lot of this so possible.
Yes, we will do. So a big thank you, as always, to our premium members who are: we've got G-Man, we have Sega Saturn Lad, and we have Andy Mackey. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much, gents, and it really is appreciated. It helps me and James keep the channel running, because as much as we've been doing this for free, there are costs involved, and it just helps us keep it going and makes the conversations with the missus a little bit easier when they're asking, what's this subscription going at? Why do you have to pay so much money for Zoom, etc.? So it makes the upkeep of the channel an awful lot easier, and just helps us keep the channel going for you guys. And hey, if you don't want to become a member, there's no change to what we do for you. You'll still see 2 videos a week, a review every week, a podcast every fortnight, and a new short every fortnight, and whatever bonus content we ever bring, whether it's indie stuff like Cold Case and Mega R type. But hey, if you've enjoyed what we've watching us, please let us know. You can catch us on Twitter. You can catch me at @SuperD. You can catch James at the SEGAHolic. You can catch the account at SEGAGuys But until next time, we will see you on the Sega side.
You got.